Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. My name is Ajaz Hussain. I'm an advisor to Valgenesis, and I'm thrilled to connect with you to share my thoughts on what I call Valgenesis Smart. What is it? Why do we need it? And how should we achieve it? Are the questions in my mind which I am pondering as an advisor to Valgenesis to keep improving Valgenesis platform, to mature it, to serve its customers, its stakeholders, to maximally utilize Valgenesis user experience. My thoughts are from the perspective of pharmaceutical quality for the 21st century. I posit Valgenesis Smart can be viewed as a catalyst and a system for professional life cycle management to support continuous professional development during installation qualification, operational qualification, and process qualification and continuous process verification of Valgenesis life cycle management system. And I believe in the growing chaos around us, it is urgent and essential that we must be the change we seek in the world. Valgenesis lifecycle management user experience is an opportunity, is the foundation to generate the know-how to be the change needed to navigate chaos and complexity. Some already know it. For many, it is hidden in plain sight. Valgenesis Smart is a way of thinking and planning to expand awareness and the opportunities the Valgenesis platform provides not only for more confident, more assured process validation and continued process verification, but all those who are involved with Valgenesis systems can utilize their experience for their own professional development and maturity. I have organized my thoughts around experience and maturity, the experience economy, and then Valgenesis Smart and user experience. I envision Valgenesis Smart to be a fractal approach to quality management and to professional development at all levels of the hierarchy, corporate, regulatory, or any system hierarchy. My daughter, who is an architect, envisioned the whole notion of a fractal approach to quality management system as a seamless, common sense approach to understanding our duty of care in a corporation or in any hierarchy. In this talk, I'll discuss experience and maturity in the context of the new drug development system, pre-approval, approval, the system for manufacturing, technology transfer to process validation to continued process verification of both legacy and new pharmaceutical products, good laboratory clinical practices, and of course manufacturing practices, and the buzz around quality management maturity, which is a program that FDA is currently working on. I also envision pharmaceutical development in very simple terms. A profiteer who learns to be patient becomes a professional who, with practice, becomes a good practitioner. Our development system maturity is like an onion, layers and layers and layers of biases, conflicts, legacy requirements, which are difficult to overcome and address, and cutting an onion to look deep inside to get to the root cause of challenges we face is often tearful. Maturity is the state attained when drug manufacturers establish and follow consistently reliable and robust business processes to achieve quality objectives and promote continual improvement. That's how FDA defines maturity. I have included in this definition, maturity is the state of mind because I'm seeking internal validation as we perform external validation. We qualify for new drug development per 1962 Kaifa-Harris Amendment by our scientific training and experience, and we are expected to make decision of effectiveness fairly and responsibly. We qualify to be in a setting of current good manufacturing practices based on education, training, or experience. That's how the regulations state. But I like to say education, training, and experience. The key missing element in this is epistemology. How do you know what you know? The theory of knowledge. For now, I'll simply say that epistemology without contact with scientific method becomes an empty schema. Scientific method without epistemology is insofar as it is thinkable at all, primitive and muddled. Socio-technical system can mature or must mature, maturing the society and its technologies synergistically. Our maturity to be suitable and capable to move from don't use, don't tell, a phrase I still remember from 2001 FDA Science Board meeting uttered by Norm Winskill of Pfizer. And if I don't look, there is no problem. That's a phrase that Amgen had to overcome to begin their continual improvement process, to be able to predict and prevent harm. To do so, learning from experience demands us to be unbiased, non-theory laden observers of actual reality. In our errors is an opportunity to learn. Nothing is perfect. Errors and back-propagating errors as in a neural network is a way to continuously develop ourselves. Attention to continuous professional development and maturity for internal validation can be analogous to IQ, OQ, PQ, and CPV. A quality management system can mature without maturing its managers, but that's not an ideal situation. They need to occur simultaneously, synergistically. What can we learn to practice professional lifecycle management? Validation lifecycle management system can also be a professional lifecycle management system. I wish to explain this using my own experience, some information and lessons from healthcare system, and a case example of how to break the 2 to 3 sigma barrier like Amgen, which I wrote in 2017. I have no association with Amgen. This was an outside-in look at their. I have been independent since 4th of July 2013, and a significant portion of my effort is to learn from experience, my own experience, and to be self-transforming. The key influencer in this journey has been Dr. Deming, and how to expand my consciousness from experience is what I wish to share with you as a means for validating subjective experiences objectively. I wish you to focus on this picture. ICH Q8 Step 2 discussion, Kyoto, Japan, November 2004. The rapporteur of the working group, which I was a member of, acknowledged my contribution to this guideline with 3 phrases: design space, Procrustean, epistemology. I will focus on Procrustean and epistemology throughout my discussion as in the context of development. Procrustean is the low order of consciousness, one size fits all, a control freak, a zero tolerant control freak, which is imperialist in my way of thinking. And I wish to explain this. So all I'm doing is relating good equals valid, and how do I translate plan, do, check, and act cycle in matter to mind is what I will talk to you about. From 2012 to 2014, the breaches in assurance of data integrity, bad eye, had become a major challenge due to FDA's more rigorous inspections of facilities in India. I was born and I grew up in India, and I could see the talent India has. And it's a very young talent. And having returned and reconnected with India after many years, I really felt that expertise, the technical expertise India has, is not able to leverage and not able to mature to handle the complexities of the regulatory environment, the diverse regulatory environment that they have to operate in India and also meet the US regulatory standards. So I committed myself to culture of quality development, improving culture of quality, and in that process, professional development and maturity. And I utilized LinkedIn particularly as authoring and sharing my experiential learning. So from Schrodinger's cat and my journey from 2015 to 2020 was a concerted effort to be able to realize how I learn from experience and to objectively. Experiences are subjective, and experience, the verb means to feel. So how do I use my feelings, which are subjective, which are emotional, and how do I learn from that objectively in a professional setting? So that has been sort of my way of looking at it. And 2020 was a key because while at FDA, I had coined the term Vision 2020, I can see clearly now, and laid out a few of the directional vectors: quality and performance by design, continuous real-time monitoring of quality, specifications based on mechanistic understanding of how formulation and process factors impact product performance, high efficiency and capacity utilization, real-time review and inspection from wherever FDA is. It was in Rockville, White Oak, New Jersey district office, and so forth. And so 2020 was a key date in my mind. And so when I embarked on culture of quality training in India, and I set for myself a goal to be able to see more clearly now, or clear the problem at hand. And much of my experiential learning is available on LinkedIn. So for example, this blog post, Schrodinger's cat and my journey from 2015 to 2020 was the start, but also you can see changing process validation to build epistemic trust, science, law, and regulatory science. And then in 2020, Vision 2020 plus, end of a journey, and then continuing my writing on smart shepherding practices and newsletter to complement my posts. Quality, like beauty, is in the eye of the beholder. I know it when I see it. We tend to use quality control and quality assurance without that thinking. Quality relates to qualia, to consciousness. And quantity is a separate entity, it's material. Controlling pharmaceutical quantities and assuring quality is how I look at describing the rest of this discussion. So 21st century, what was so unique about 21st century compared to the previous centuries? And why maturity? And how smart, what is smart that will get us to maturity, I think, is the discussion. And the 21st century, pharmaceutical quality for the 21st century initiative is captured, the notion of that is captured. The pharmaceutical industry has a little secret. Even as it invents futuristic new drugs, its manufacturing techniques lag far behind those of potato chip and laundry soap makers. Wall Street Journal's new prescription for drug makers, update the plans, September 2003. Then you have the FDA white paper, Innovation and Continuous Improvement in Pharmaceutical Manufacturing, which which is difficult to search, but this link will get you there. And then the Pharmaceutical Analytical Technology, PAT, Understanding Validity of Pharmaceutical Quality Control and Assurance, I think was the chapter I contributed to the Handbook of Validation in Pharmaceutical Processes, the 4th edition, which was published last year. And for example, 4 life science lessons from the PAT to QBD journey on the ValGenesis blog, which is available for you. So what I wish to do now is to start describing the nuances of 21st century, challenges to maturity, and then hone in on what does smart mean, and particularly what is ValGenesis smart. Future generations who will have an opportunity to look back on the 21st century perhaps will ponder that our generation, knowing that we are living in experience economy, why did they struggle to learn from their experience? Lockdown, mandates, supply chain disruptions, and raging revolution, which we call Industry 4.0, is increasing human complexity, while we have inadequate attention to human irrationality, which I think is contributing to the expanding chaos we can feel all around us. But in more simpler terms, beware of regulatory defaults. Pharmaceutical science and technology has evolved. It has lagged behind the evolution of regulatory requirements, and therefore the regulatory system has many what we call defaults, such as the scale-up factor of 10x, 3 batches for stability, and so on, which are defaults, and we do not appreciate the behavioral aspects of those defaults. We tend to say, oh, we scaled it up for 10x, 10 times. On what basis? What was the scientific rationale for the complexity of the product or process you are developing? Perhaps the 10x worked for a simpler product and process. How do you know what you know? That 10x was automatically going to work for your level of complexity. Welcome to the experience economy, the post-truth world. We have had enough of experts. We are blind to the obvious, and we are also blind to our blindness. If contemporary culture were a school with all the tasks and expectations meted out by modern life as its curriculum, would anybody graduate? In over our heads is how I feel now, is how I sense now, with the complexity and chaos surrounding us. That's the nuance of 21st century we must account for. In the experience economy, to come out of the crisis and to create a new experience economy, learning from our mistakes, shouldn't we consider experience as a common cause for something good to be the change, and common cause as in common cause variation that needs to be addressed because we struggle between what is truth, fake news, information wars, and so on. Experience as a common cause and experience management as a common cause strategy. Do I take good care of my health? Do I eat well, sleep well? Do I exercise? Most of us struggle to take care of our health. We rely on systems for management of sickness. To err is human was the IOM report in 1999, Institute of Medicine report in 1999, because the error rate in healthcare system was so high. But by the year 2010 to 2018, it was evident that medical errors were third leading cause of death in America. I wonder what the situation now is. The answer the Institute of Medicine and the national academies were honing in on before the pandemic were to move away from continuing education to continuous professional development, CPD, to integrate design and systems thinking. And more recently, I think it is a stark reminder, September, a few days ago, the medical profession needs to take an honest look in the mirror. I posit, we all need to take an honest look in the mirror. Fake it till you make it is not good practice. For the current pandemic, how are the most prestigious academic institutions complying with their commitments to clinical trials? Among the most prestigious scientific journals, Science investigated and noticed they're failing utterly. FDA and NIH let clinical trial sponsor keep results secret and break the law. How can that be? Taking a different perspective, as a grandfather, forgetting about all my FDA experience, all my experience in pharmaceutical science, putting that aside, how do I interpret Reuters asking, wait, what? FDA wants 55 years to process Freedom of Information Act request over vaccine data? As a grandfather, what should I tell my daughter? We are in for a dark, dark phase of that we have never seen. We have to be ready. Be the change is the spark of light that removes darkness. And I believe our thinking within the pharma sector of integrated quality by design and systems approach to quality being ahead in compared to the healthcare sector, we hold answers not just for improving our systems, but beyond. And I think we need to be the spark. In the pharma sector, before the chaos, we had a chaotic system. We didn't appreciate systems as much as we should have. And if we do, we have a solutions. So here is a composite of news report headlines. Bad eye warning letters were going on. FDA moves to increase generic competition. Continuous manufacturing has a strong impact on drug qualities, FDA says. Suffocating silence prevented us from questioning the rot in the system. And the whistleblower from Ranbaxy. Fed up with drug companies, hospitals decide to start their own. Generic pill color changes may affect medication adherence, effectiveness, and the US generic drug market in chaos. Let us appreciate systems and let's be the change. I think we have within our community the answer. And ValGenesis Smart can be a contributor, not just for your development, but for improving the outcome of your corporation, but you might even provide answers to save the world. Controlling quality and quantities by testing is necessary but not sufficient. Let's move towards assurance. You can only assure others when you're self-assured. Assurance is an experience. And let's remember the Procrustean problem in prescriptive regulations. We have seen the worst case scenario of mandates, coercive mandates being placed upon. And a journey to clear my foggy brain was in the fog of war was what I was thinking many, many years ago, because I could only see 6 blind men and regulatory science was blind too. But the answer was, what was the way out of hell? I think it was being the change, in Gandhi's words. Yet in 2017, I was not in a good place. I remember 2017 as a year of confirming an amazing juxtapositions. Jump, frog, jump while you can. There was so much to dream about. There must be more to life. Boiled frogs, the lyrics from Boiled Frogs. I was scared we were already boiled in 2017, but yet finding the spark to keep progressing, finding solutions was my yearning then. It took me much reflection to hone in on the key challenges. Underestimating complexity is one of the biases, a confirmation bias. To QBD or not to QBD was the big debate in 2014. You can see my presentation in Korea to the FDA counterpart in Korea in December 2014. This slide is from that. But also going back while I was outside pharma sector, looking outside in, I was invited to speak at the FDA conference in 2010 while I was at Philip Morris International working on tobacco harm reduction. And I came back and say, look, I didn't have the words. Process analytical technology and QBD had bifurcated from the original integrated thinking that we had when I was there. And I called for unity. And what it comes down to is underestimating complexity, rush to clinical, file first, figure it out later, practices which are legacy practices, in process and product regulatory specifications set after the clinical and bio studies have been done. And so, and then technology transferred to manufacturing to be able to validate and manufacture a product for specifications which were never intended. That was not the original design specifications. And then we use compendial tests, which are market standard with mixed zero tolerance criteria. No unit shall be outside something. And we expect to do continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is continually reducing variance and reducing variability. And if you have no unit zero tolerance, you can only be in a corrective action mode, root cause unknown, and perpetual corrective action mode. Common or special reasons or causes we can't distinguish. We can't distinguish between errors of omission and errors of commission. What I call this is we have an immature system, but the immaturity comes from our academics, from the regulators, and the corporate, and us, Dunning-Kruger effect. We think we know more than we do. From 2015 onwards, the number of external failures, recalls were skyrocketing, and FDA had to go back, try to reinvent the pharmaceutical quality for the 21st century, and they called it 2.0. And they essentially called for Six Sigma, not the methodology. The method, I'm not going to talk about the Six Sigma methodology, which applies only for simple systems where cause and effect are self-evident. Six Sigma only in terms of 3.4 defects per million opportunities is rarely seen in pharma. And FDA's current thinking in 2017 was need for performance-based regulations. And I believe that is also being reflected in quality management maturity thinking at the moment. So we'll come back to that later. So is Six Sigma, the 3.4 defects per million opportunity of the future of pharmaceutical quality, is a question mark, because until you get over the 2 to 3 sigma barrier, which is set because of how we set specification and how we use compendial test for QC test, we have a problem. And will the pharmaceutical industry ever get to Six Sigma, where the comments in 2017? And that's when I took a look at Amgen's march towards 3.4 defects per million opportunity using the 2011 process validation guideline and the ICH Q10 guideline and Q9 guideline and so forth. So they have the know-how is there. Knowing is necessary, but not sufficient. Action is necessary here. Theory of knowledge, knowledge of variation, appreciation for system, and psychology of change. How are these aspects that Dr. Deming has talked about interrelate, interact? That's how to think about a system. A system is made up of parts that interact and interrelate. The answer is in the interactions and interrelationships. So in 2015, I realized that some adults continue to develop, but at different rates. Many do not. Why is that? What holds some of us back? Answer came from the constructive theory of adult human development from Professor Keegan's work at Harvard, that we have acquired an immunity to change. We are unable to manage our feelings, especially our negative feelings, in a way that we want to remain in a comfort zone. And that becomes our internal change prevention system. Combine that change prevention system with FDA approval. You require post-approval changes because your process had been validated and you have to redo the validation. It's easier for us to say, if I don't look, there is no problem. Or when you have to introduce new technology, FDA doesn't know how to interpret that. That will delay our approval process. Don't use, but we have to use it so we don't tell FDA. That's our socialized mind. That's the dominant where the community of pharmaceutical knowledge is. They're socialized into change prevention and a feeling system which is not conducive to continuous development, maturity. We have to know how to solve problems in this conundrum, and to be able to solve problem is to become self-authored. Self-authorship, the fourth order of consciousness, is a key, and the knowing system we call knowledge management, but that's not it. You have to know how to solve problems, and then you have to progress further to be able to convince others what needs to be done to prevent those occurrences across the system. And for that, we need to have a self-transforming mind, and we have to bring the corporate system to be self-transforming. So, can a management system mature without maturing its managers? Ideally, the two have to mature synergistically. But yes, a system is made of parts that interact and interrelate. When those interactions and interrelationships are synergistic, a system performance is better than its parts. It can happen. Ideally, they go hand in hand. To synergize, a quality management system needs to first remove fear, help practitioners expand their awareness, and practice individually and collectively so that anybody can dance. That means to self-transform. And epistemology, statistical process control, process validation, continued process verification, systems thinking, and continuous professional development have to go hand in hand. Don't underestimate complexity. In a complex system, cause and effect relationships are uncertain or unknown. They're only known in hindsight, and emergence is a characteristic of a complex system. Hence, we take time to do research and development in the pre-market phase. Chaotic system, on the other hand, exhibit extreme sensitivity to initial conditions and has strange attractors, which are complex. What are the initial conditions we are sensitive to? Materials, especially the physical attributes of the materials. Pharmaceutical manufacturing is a physical process, and most of the compendial tests are looking for identity and purity. And we don't have a good handle on the physical attributes and the excipient functionality of the materials and how they process in the thing. Initial conditions are us too. And so forth. Therefore, validation, you take that as an assumption, and therefore we need continued process verification and life cycle management. We are makers of our meaning, and the meaning we give to experience is the key. So how do I translate a fairly complex theory of adult human development, constructive theory of adult human development, to share with the people on the front lines, at the operator, the lab bench? A very simple. Procrustean, looking good, being good, doing good, and seeing good are ways that we can feel inside. And an intrapersonal, internal model for good practice. We don't want to be procrustean, zero tolerance, one size fits all control freaks. That's a stage in adult human development, which analogous to imperialist. And we know how, as teenagers, we wanted to look good at any cost. And then we are socialized. We don't want to rock the boat. We just tell me what to do, I'll be good. But we have to be self-authored. We have to be internally validated. Instead of seeking external validation, we need to transform to be internally validated, to be self-assured. We can only give others assurance of quality when we are self-assured. Fake it till you make it is not a good practice. So that's how simple it is. And meaning making in manufacturing maturity is very, very simple terms we can use to define what we need to do and how we make meaning of our experience. We seamlessly transfer between physical domain, information domain, and cognitive domain. What we have to pay attention to is sense making is a distinct process than understanding. Both sense making and understanding are in perpetual need of internal validation. Take a look at this figure for sense making, which was something I picked up after the 9/11 situation in 2001. And process understanding was defined in the FDA PAT guidance, and sense making was part of the training of FDA reviewers and inspection. And more recently, I wrote on new prior knowledge. So take a look at this sequence of steps and see how you make sense, and whether or not you check your assumptions, and whether or not you correct your incorrect prior knowledge to replace that with new prior knowledge. So you have deeper understanding because of your scientific training, and each scientific training is in different disciplines. So you need to have a shared deep understanding, but at the same time, across the hierarchies and across disciplines and across multifactorial situations, you have to be able to make sense before you come to a conclusion. Nothing is perfect. Approved by FDA and validated are not excuses for if I don't look, there is no problem. Unbiased, non-theory laden observations are key, and learning from errors, not letting errors recur to become mistakes, is professional development. The notion of software development maturity models and can be extended to self-monitoring analysis and reporting technology, to pre-digital, digital silos, to connected plant, predictive plant, and adaptive plant, which is a model for digital plant maturity model. Similarly, since the 60s, we have known about specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely objective for performance. What we have to bring in is safe, modest, actionable research and testing of assumptions into our practice to be able to learn from experience. It is smart to be aware of and leverage values hidden in plain sight. What are the values hidden in plain sight in ValGenesis validation life cycle management system? It's up to you to discover. Smart objectives, technology, and assumptions that ensure currency of validation, timely post-approval changes, effective CAPA, and seamless continual improvement amidst a revolution and regulatory mandates to validate management of risk and maturity is the opportunity, and it is seamlessly available not just for process validation and its management in the material world, but if you take a moment to reflect, you can also go from seeking validation to be internally validated in the same process. Remember, plan, do, check, act. The difference between plan and doing and checking and acting or taking action is key here. Furthermore, if you go beyond thinking of a cycle, cycle brings you back to the same spot. Think about that as a spiral. Spiral means looking at the same situation from different perspectives. Taking a development stance would mean you are being self-transforming, you're being self-authored, you're being socialized, you're being imperialist, and so forth. But also, empathy is key, and a pharmaceutical quality management system has to account for profiteers, patients, public, professionals, and remember what I started with. A profiteer who learns to be patient becomes a professional, and with practice becomes a good practitioner. Care is research, knowledge is power, but wisdom is in action. Valgenesis Smart brings in smart objectives, smart technology, and smart assumptions. Finding ways to feel safe, to be modest, to be actionable, and to be able to do research and testing of assumptions despite the labels of FDA approved and validated process. You have to go get over your immunity to change. If I don't look, there is no problem. There are wonderful opportunities emerging in terms of virtual experience of errors of omission and commission, mistakes, failures, simulated environments for training, and then bringing in simultaneously IQ, OQ, PQ, and CPV principles for also onboarding, orientation, and socialization to self-authoring solutions to problems that we encountered in legacy and new products. We have to remind ourselves that academic product and software testing alone is often insufficient to establish confidence. Quality cannot be tested into a product. It has to be built in by design. And the recent FDA draft on computer software assurance simply provides the emphasis on this principle. We must take a development stance and we must be the change. It requires courage, and it requires us to recognize risk is personal as it is professional. The COVID-19 pandemic personalized risk in ways unprecedented in our lifetime. Valgenesis and IRIS have come together to ensure objective risk assessment, a weakness that the recent draft Q9 revision is attempting to address. A journey without traveling is what professional life cycle management, it is a journey within. Professional, that is cognitive dimension and linked to interpersonal cultural aspects, to sensing fairly and responsibly internally. Intrapersonal dimension is, I could have been a thalidomide baby. That's when 1962 Kaifa-Harris Amendment was established. As I conclude my talk, I remind myself between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is my power to choose my response. In my response lies my growth and my freedom. Integrity of experience is what is essential. Contemporaneous notes of how I feel, how I think, and how I act, not just do and act, really is my way of ensuring integrity of my experience. I use social media, LinkedIn, to translate my experiential learning into blog post. Intent by design to learn from experience. It is a key to being suitable and capable of integrating design and systems thinking. Thinking is necessary but not sufficient. Taking action is what minds the gap. PDCA spiral, not just cycle. Don't let your knowledge pyramid topple. Thank you for listening. And if you're interested in any of my publications, drop me an email. I'll be glad to share copies of these if you're not able to find open access. Thank you.